Jonesy and Amanda.
Jam Nation.
Well, you may know our next guest is a former politician, but 19 years ago, almost everything ended when John Brogden attempted to take his own life. He's not alone. The statistics are horrifying. Every day, 9 Australians die by suicide, more than double the deaths on roads. 75% of people who do take their own lives are male. Well, John's using his story and the stories of 15 others to help people shatter the silence around suicide. A new book called Profiles of Hope. John, hi.
G'day. John. How are you,
So nice to see you.
Right.
Are you okay, Day?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're okay?
Very important day. I am okay. How are you guys?
Yeah, I'm good.
We're good, thank you.
Hearing that thing from James Package's before,
Yeah.
you can be whoever, and it can just hit you.
Look, it was incredible. He was my first interview in the book, and I went and spent some time with him in his home in Argentina. And he's a guy who's incredibly privileged, incredibly wealthy, who focuses on his failures, not his successes in life, who, by his own admission, so I'm not trying to embarrass him when I say this, has an incredible struggle with his weight, has an incredible struggle with, when he's bouncing back and forth with alcohol and cigarettes and the like. And he's a great example of it doesn't matter how privileged you are, mental health doesn't discriminate. And after the Spotlight report, people blogged away with their comments, and they were universally supportive and sympathetic. You would have thought people might say, I don't care about James Packer, who's worth billions, he can look after himself. I've got real problems in life, he hasn't. But everybody who blogged said, I feel for this guy. I had one person actually text me and say, I was sitting next to my son, my adult son, watching this, who's got terribly overweight with some of the medication he's taking for his mental illness. And I said, look, even James Packer has that problem. So the way I wrote the book, with the interviews, was to get a collection of Australia's very wide cross-section of people so that everyone who reads it can look in and see a bit of themselves. So there's a great farmer in there, Peter Maloney, which tells that classic country story. There's a young bloke who survived his suicide only to spend at 16, suicide attempt, only to be now spending the rest of his life in a wheelchair, but with this incredible determination to walk again. And, I ask a question of many people, did you have to get that low to bounce back? And almost universally they say yes. They also say, like Jackie Lambie, I wish I didn't have to get that far to bounce back. But they have bounced back. And in many cases, I don't think Jackie Lambie, when she was 16 and joined the army, thought she'd be a senator, almost running the country sometimes with the things that she says and the way she resonates with the public. I think a lot of these people have had transformative changes, but there are some struggle stories in there where their success is actually just still being alive, and that they're still going through it, the way James was telling us on Sunday night. I mean, that was incredibly, I think raw is a great word for the way James went through it. And, he's been there and I've been there. And what I want this book to tell people, as you said, Amanda, the 9 Australians on average who'll take their lives today. The 65,000 Australians every year who attempt suicide, 65,000. There's a way through and there is hope, even when you think nobody cares. Because my experience was that I stuffed up publicly. I felt I'd shamed Lucy, our family, all my friends, all my supporters. I'd become such a burden that the best thing for me, not the only thing, the best thing for me was to take my own life. And I knew you guys back then. You used to have me in.
That was the day. Like we spoke to you on the night that you went to that function. And I said, you're in the box seat. Yeah. Bob Carr's resigned. You are going to be our next premier.
Well, yeah.
And then it just unraveled from there. And
it did.
And I remember at the time how we handled it. And I don't know if I had the mental capacity back then. You just said, oh, John's gone crazy. But then you look at it now, how you've come round and the awareness about it.
But what's the spike, though? What did save you?
Well, to be honest, what saved me was the police turned up to my office and got me early, before I died. That's what happened.
But how have you saved yourself every day since?
Well, through a number of ways, but without a doubt, my lifeline is my wife and now our children. And, that's good for me, but it's a challenge for them, right? I mean, I have suicidality and depression. I'll have suicidality probably for the rest of my life. What does that mean? That means part of my makeup is if something goes really bad for me, usually emotionally or personally, not so much like in business life and those sorts of things, but personally and emotionally. And if I catastrophize it, in a way that you two might say, well, look, actually that's okay, you can get through that. But for me, I think I can't get through it. And then I start to think about suicide. So over 20 years since that happened, 19 years, I've begun to learn how to better handle that. So people often say, what does that include? And it does include, and this I think people thought this was arrogant amongst friends and family. But do you know how as Australians we're really good at having to go to Auntie so-and-so's Christmas party and people are rude to us or we don't like it or somebody's going to ask us the question. And I just don't go to those things anymore because I know they're going to upset me. Now, for a while, people would have thought, well, he's up himself or whatever it is. But I don't like big late night functions anymore. So there are a number of things I choose not to do because I know they'll either get me too tired, which is bad.
Yep.
And therefore, batteries down and susceptible, or I just don't like them anymore, which is funny because in the old game you had to do 7 a week, right? One for every night. So everybody has their own solution. There's a fantastic story in there of this farmer called Peter Maloney who was a Brisbane electrician but married a country girl, so had to go and be a farmer from scratch. And you know what farmers are like? They're pretty hard on people from the city and who become, new farmers. He found it incredibly hard to adjust. He had crippling dyslexia as a kid, picked on, all that sort of stuff. And he got to that point where he tried to take his own life. And it was only one of his kids riding up on a motorbike to where he'd gone to take his own life where he decided, no, I'm not going to do that.
Wow.
And he's turned that around and he's changed his life. He does meditation every morning, Qigong every morning. And here's the great thing for breakfast people, morning people, a 3-minute ice bath every morning. So a lot of people have radically changed their life and set it on a new path. And as I said, the fascinating question I ask is, did you have to get to that point to bounce back? And the answer is yes. But the message is that I want this book to tell people is there is a way through. You get to that point, you think no one loves you, you may burn some bridges along the way. And the reality is that might be true, but Lifeline wants you to be alive. A lot of people want you to be alive. And here's the thing. Over the last 20 years, I think it's probably 20 years, we've got much better at realising that mental health, anxiety, depression, etc., is normal. It's just like people who have kidney diseases and heart attacks and all of those sort of things. It just happens to be an illness of the organ called the brain as opposed to a body, something in physical illness in your body. I think we've done great work there, and you guys have been in this industry for a long time. You wouldn't have had this conversation 30 years ago.
No, that's what I mean. Like 19 years ago, we've rounded a corner with it. I have, like in the old days, you'd say, because I don't have anxiety.
Yeah.
I do notice if I drink too much, I get hangxiety. The next day I do get a hangover anxiety because I think, what did I say last night? Or what did I do? As I get older, so I'm adjusting how much I drink these days. I think that's part of just getting older. But what you've done as an advocate, I just commend you for it.
Oh, thanks, mate.
It's great.
And recognising your triggers is a very interesting point.
It's very important.
Practical thing to do.
It is. And that point about normalising mental illness is very important because more and more people talk about it. And, whether it's footy people or, famous people, people in the street, I often will say to people, and it's part also of breaking the barrier, how are you going? How's your mental health? Not how's your mental health? And often I'll know they've been through a tough time or they've got a tough time coming up. And people don't bullshit me on that point. They say, it's a bit, so that's changed. Are you okay is important. But we don't want to normalise suicide.
No.
Because we actually want people to live.
Yes.
We actually want them to live. So it's strange to say this. There's nothing normal about suicide. And I don't want anyone to think it's normal to suicide. And that's not a religious judgment or a value judgment. And I tried to kill myself, so I'd be the last person to impose that view What I am saying is we want you to live. With apologies to Wham, choose life. You're better off being alive than dead. And we can get you through. We can get you through. And the challenge we have is those suicide numbers are very stubborn. They're not going down. But believe it or not, during COVID, suicide dropped 5% in Australia.
What did you put that down
well,
to?
Jonesy's looking at me saying, what are you talking about? You know, how could that be right? You know what I put it down to? A few things. There's no doubt JobKeeper was a lifesaver.
Mm-hmm.
People didn't have to worry about money in the bank. But put that aside, everybody put their head over the back fence or over the balcony in the unit block and said, do you need anything?
Mm.
In our little group of houses, the people down the road went to the old couple and said, don't worry, we'll take your bins up. We're going shopping. Do you need anything? We got a COVID dog. Of course, we got a COVID dog. And as you walk the dog, you don't just nod and say good morning. You stopped and chatted to people. I yelled this from the rooftops as the chair of Lifeline. Just ring somebody.
Yeah.
Just ring somebody for that day, somebody you haven't contacted for years or just drop them a text. And I think we became really connected. Suicide dropped almost the minute, presentations for mental health went through the roof. Lifeline's calls went through the roof. Now, that's a double-edged sword. You say, oh, my God, what a disaster. Lifeline's numbers have doubled. I say there's a lot of crisis out there, but thank God they're ringing
People
Lifeline.
are calling.
For 60 years we've been yelling from the rooftops, call Lifeline. And what happened is that the magic call we got, mostly from blokes, was not only is this the first time I've called Lifeline, I never thought I'd have to call Lifeline. Now, I see that as a great thing that they're reaching out.
Yeah.
But in terms of your own triggers, it's critical. But Amanda, I could be talking to you about diabetes. I could be saying, do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that, to have a good life to live with diabetes. I could be talking about heart disease, don't eat too much red meat, whatever you like. Therefore, I talk to you about what are the good things for your own mental health. Having depression, it is about getting the right amount of sleep. It is about not getting yourself in stressful positions. It is usually about not drinking much and not eating bad stuff. And it also includes getting like a half an hour of sun on your face every day. Now, you think, what's all that about? There is actually a chemical reaction that will be beneficial to your for battling depression, getting out in the sun and staying social. So Ian Thorpe's in this book. And he is the most he has, I think, the greatest burden of fame of anyone I've met. He can't go down the road. I don't know how he goes and buys bread and milk, right, without being mobbed or asking for an autograph.
And also people judging him about his sexuality all that sort of stuff.
Or looking at him, that staring thing, looking at him. And so his burden's incredible. He was swimming for Australia at 14.
Yeah.
And the sexuality point's fascinating. He tells the story in this book that at 16, when he was, winning and becoming a national sensation, because the bloke's 17 foot tall and, he's got the most extraordinary swimmer's body and recognisable. At 16, as he got out of the water, a journalist said to him, "Oh, are you gay?"
Yeah.
At 16.
No,
16.
I remember that.
Just extraordinary. He says in the book he later found out from that journalist, who was terribly embarrassed and apologetic, that he would have got the sack. The journo was told, "You'll get the sack if you don't ask that question." Now, thank God those
the media's
views have changed.
I think it has changed.
And society's changed. But with Ian, he has a list.
Yeah.
And he said, I've got a list of
daily
things.
checklist?
Well, he said, I've got a list of things. I said, like a written list. He said, yeah, a written list. He said, if I don't walk the dog for 2 days, there's something wrong with me. If I'm not cooking myself dinner, I'm not eating properly, there's something. If I'm drinking too much. And my friends have that list. It was fascinating. So they'll check in and
they'll say, have you done this?
Yeah.
Well,
so that's about getting your network supportive. So there are lots of different stories in this.
John, you're giving the whole book away here now, mate. Sit on your treasures. Grab a copy of Profiles in Hope now at all good bookstores.
John,
I'm
it's so
disappointed
good to see you.
that you didn't bring Lucy's muffins.
Well, I
know
know.
I made an offhand comment 19 years ago that are a little dry.
They were savoury. Who makes savoury? I remember it was something who makes savoury muffins.
Is that what you said,
Yes.
Brendan?
I've changed my
Is there a
attitude.
chapter on that?
I'm the biggest savoury guy in the world now. Jay Bro, it is so good to talk
Thanks,
to you,
mate.
Thank you for coming in.
And thank you guys for always being there for me when I need to talk about mental health and suicide
always here
prevention.
for
We
you,
always
mate.
are, John. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.